The Tractor Trouble Chronicles. Samuel Sam Carter had spent the better part of his 48 years tending to the sprawling fields of his family farm, a patchwork of rolling hills and golden crops nestled in the heart of rural Indiana. The land had been in his family for 3 generations, passed down from his grandfather to his father, and now to him. It wasn't just dirt and seed to Sam. It was legacy, sweat, and a quiet kind of pride that didn't need words to prove itself. Over the years, he'd seen plenty of oddities. A cow stuck in the creek bed, a tornado that tore the roof off the old silo, even a runaway pig that ended up in the mayor's backyard. But nothing, compared to the sight that greeted him on that crisp March morning in 2025. He'd been out in the barn, tinkering with the irrigation pump, when he heard it, a high-pitched giggle, sharp and out of place against the usual symphony of clucking hens and distant tractor hums. Sam straightened up, wiping grease from his hands onto his faded jeans, and squinted toward the source of the noise. His prize tractor, a gleaming red beast he'd nicknamed Big Red, stood parked near the edge of the barn, its engine silent but its cabin very much alive. Inside, 2 kids were clambering over the seats like it was a jungle gym. The older one, a boy with tousled brown hair, was yanking at the steering wheel, while the younger one, a girl with pigtails, bounced up and down, her small hands slapping at the dashboard. Sam froze, his brain scrambling to make sense of the scene. Big Red wasn't just any tractor. It was a $50,000 piece of machinery, meticulously maintained, with a hydraulic system that could plow through solid earth like butter. He'd spent years keeping it in top shape, polishing the paint, tuning the engine, even installing a modern remote lock system for safety. To see it turned into a playground by 2 giggling intruders sent a jolt of disbelief through him. And then he saw her, standing just outside the tractor, arms crossed and a smirk plastered across her face, was a woman he vaguely recognized. Laura Bennett. She lived a few miles down the road in a shiny new subdivision that had sprung up like a weed in the last decade. Sam didn't know her well. Small towns didn't mean everyone was best buddies, but he'd heard enough. Laura had a reputation, loud, pushy, and utterly convinced the world spun on her say-so. Right now, she was watching her kids with an expression of pure amusement, like they were starring in some adorable home movie instead of trespassing on his property. "Hey," Sam's voice cut through the air as he strode toward them, boots crunching against the gravel. "Get off that tractor." The kids didn't even flinch. The boy reached for a lever, the hydraulic control lever. Sam realized with a lurch in his chest, and fumbled with it, his small fingers tugging at the metal. Sam's heart skipped a beat. One wrong move, and that lever could send Big Red lurching forward, straight into the barn wall, or worse. He quickened his pace, his long legs eating up the distance, but before he could reach them, Laura raised a lazy hand and smirked. "Oh, relax, farmer," she drawled, her tone dripping with condescension. "They're just kids having fun." She waved him off like he was a pesky fly buzzing around her picnic. Sam felt his pulse spike. Farmer? He wasn't even 50, and this wasn't some rinky-dink toy tractor from a department store. It was a high-powered machine, capable of flattening anything in its path if handled wrong. He took a deep breath, forcing his voice to stay level despite the heat creeping up his neck. "This isn't a playground," he said. "That thing's dangerous. They need to get off. Now." Laura rolled her eyes, letting out an exaggerated sigh that could have been heard clear across the county. "Oh, come on. What's the worst that could happen? They're not actually driving it." She chuckled, the sound grating against Sam's fraying patience. He glanced at the kids again. The girl had discovered the horn and was slamming it with glee, the loud blare echoing through the barn and rattling his eardrums. The boy, meanwhile, had moved on to pressing random buttons on the dashboard, his face lit up with reckless curiosity. Sam felt a headache blooming behind his eyes. "Last warning," he said, his voice sharpening. "Get them off, or you won't like what happens next." Laura planted a hand on her hip, her smirk widening into something almost predatory. "Oh, are you threatening me now? What are you going to do? Call the tractor police?" She threw her head back and laughed, a loud, mocking sound that bounced off the barn walls. Sam exhaled slowly, his hands curling into fists at his sides. He'd dealt with entitled folks before, city types who thought farms were just big petting zoos. But Laura took it to a whole new level. She wasn't just ignoring him. She was treating him like a punchline. That's when the idea hit him. A slow, sly smile spread across his face as he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Laura was too busy reveling in her defiance to notice. Big Red's remote lock system was a feature Sam had added a couple of years back, a safety measure for when he left it unattended. With a few quick taps on his phone, he activated it. The tractor's controls froze, the steering wheel locked, the pedals went dead, and the doors snapped shut with a faint click. It took only seconds for the chaos to begin. "Mom, I can't move it," the boy yelped, yanking at the wheel with both hands. Laura's smug expression faltered. She stepped forward and tugged at the cabin door. It didn't budge. She pulled again, harder this time, her manicured nails scraping against the handle. Nothing. Inside, the kids' voices grew louder, the girls' giggles turning into whines. "What?" Laura spun around, her face twisting in shock. "What did you do?" Sam folded his arms and leaned against the barn wall, watching with quiet amusement. "Oh, nothing," he said. "Just keeping your kids safe. Since you're not too concerned about it." Laura's face flushed a deep red. She yanked at the door again, this time with both hands, her composure unraveling. Inside, the kids were escalating, the boy shouting, the girl slamming her fists against the glass, her whines turning into full-on sobs. "Mom, let us out." Laura whirled back to Sam, her eyes blazing. "You let them out right now, or I swear." "Or what?" Sam cut her off, his tone calm but edged with steel. "You were just saying they're having fun. What's the problem now?" Laura's mouth opened and closed, her usual quick wit failing her. She glanced around the farm, as if expecting a crowd to materialize and take her side, but the fields were empty save for the chickens clucking in the distance. For the first time, she looked unsure, her bravado crumbling under the weight of her own mess. "All right," she huffed, forcing a sweeter tone that didn't quite fit her. "Look, let's not be dramatic. Just unlock it, and we'll leave. No harm done." Sam's smile widened. "That's funny. A minute ago, you said I was being dramatic about them being on the tractor. So which is it? No harm done, or is this actually a problem?" Laura's eye twitched. The kids' wails were growing louder, the girls' cries piercing the air like a siren. She was losing patience fast. "Fine," she snapped. "You made your point. Now let them out." Sam studied her for a long moment, savoring the shift in power. She was still clinging to her ego, but the panic in her voice gave her away. He could stretch this out, really drive the lesson home. "You know," he mused, "I could just call the sheriff instead. This is trespassing, reckless endangerment, might even be neglect. Sheriff'd have a field day with this." Laura's face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare." Sam pulled his phone back out, holding it up like he was about to dial. "You sure about that? I've got security cameras that caught the whole thing." "That did it." Laura's bravado shattered. "All right, I'm sorry," she blurted, the words spilling out in a rush. "I shouldn't have let them on your stupid tractor. Just let them out." Sam let her words hang in the air, relishing the moment, before pressing the unlock button on his phone. The tractor's controls released with a soft beep, and the doors swung open. The kids scrambled out, the boy tripping over his own feet in his haste, the girl running straight to Laura and clinging to her leg, sobbing. Laura shot Sam one last venomous glare. "You're a real piece of work, you know that?" Sam chuckled, unfazed. "And you're a real piece of something else, Laura. But we both knew that already." She turned on her heel and stormed off, dragging her kids behind her. Sam watched them go, shaking his head. He had a feeling this wasn't the end of it. People like Laura didn't learn their lessons the first time, or the second, or the third. As he turned back to Big Red, he sighed with relief. The tractor was still in one piece, no serious damage done. But one thing was certain. If Laura ever showed up again, he'd be ready. The dust from Laura Bennett's retreating car had barely settled when Sam Carter climbed into Big Red's cabin to check for damage. His hands ran over the dashboard, inspecting every button and lever the kids had touched. Thankfully, nothing seemed broken, just a few smudged fingerprints and a lingering echo of that blasted horn in his ears. He leaned back in the seat, exhaling a mix of relief and irritation. The encounter with Laura had left a sour taste, like biting into an unripe apple. She'd stormed off, but Sam knew her type. People like that didn't just slink away quietly. Later that afternoon, as the sun dipped low over the fields, Sam heard the familiar rumble of a truck pulling up the driveway. It was Tim Grayson, his closest neighbor and a wiry man with a perpetual grin who'd lived across the road for decades. Tim hopped out, his work boots kicking up gravel, and sauntered over with a thermos of coffee in hand. "Heard you had some excitement today," Tim said, leaning against the barn door as Sam recounted the tractor fiasco. His grin widened with every detail: Laura's smirk, the kids' chaos, the remote lock trick. "You locked him in?" "Man, I'd pay to see her face when that happened." Sam chuckled, but his expression sobered. "Think she'll let it go?" Tim snorted, pouring coffee into a spare mug for Sam. "Laura Bennett. That woman's got a grudge-holding record longer than my old mare's tail. She'll be back, mark my words. Probably with some harebrained scheme to make you look like the bad guy." Sam sipped the coffee, the warmth grounding him. "She's already calling me farmer like it's an insult. Next thing, she'll have the whole subdivision thinking I'm some cranky hermit." "She might," Tim warned, his tone shifting serious. "She's got a knack for twisting stories. You'd best keep an eye out." That night, Sam sat on his porch, the crickets chirping a steady rhythm. He couldn't shake Tim's words. Laura's smug face flashed in his mind, and he knew this wasn't over. She'd humiliated herself, and people like her didn't take kindly to that. He resolved to double-check his security cameras in the morning, better safe than sorry. Meanwhile, a few miles away, Laura paced her pristine kitchen, her heels clicking against the tile. Her kids, Ethan and Mia, were upstairs, finally quiet after their tractor tantrum. Her face burned with the memory of Sam's calm defiance, the way he'd turned her own words against her. She'd underestimated him, and that stung worse than the locked tractor doors. Grabbing her phone, she texted her group chat of subdivision moms, her loyal posse. "That farmer down the road is a menace," she typed. "Locked my kids in his tractor like some psycho. We need to do something about him." The replies rolled in fast: gasps, outrage, promises to spread the word. Laura smiled. If Sam wanted a fight, she'd give him one. The next few days were deceptively quiet on Sam's farm. He went about his routine, feeding the chickens, checking the soybean fields, tuning Big Red's engine. But by midweek, signs of trouble crept in. One morning, he found a pile of crushed soda cans scattered near his mailbox, clearly tossed from a passing car. The next day, a crude drawing of a tractor with a stick-figure farmer labeled Jerk appeared scratched into the dirt by his gate. Petty stuff, but it set Sam's nerves on edge. Tim stopped by again, this time with news. "Word's going around the subdivision," he said, scratching his beard. "Laura's spinning a tale. Says you're a nutcase who terrorized her kids. Some folks are eating it up." Sam groaned. "She's blowing it out of proportion. I locked the tractor, not them." "Doesn't matter," Tim replied. "She's got half the soccer moms ready to boycott your roadside veggie stand. You need to watch your back." Determined not to let Laura's gossip derail him, Sam spent an afternoon upgrading his security. He added 2 more cameras, one by the gate, another overlooking the barn, and tested the feeds on his laptop. If she wanted to play dirty, he'd have proof. That evening, Laura sat in her living room, sipping wine with 3 of her closest allies: Cheryl, a loudmouth with a bleach-blonde bob; Marissa, a nervous type who nodded at everything; and Jen, the group's unofficial enforcer. "He thinks he can humiliate me and get away with it?" Laura fumed, swirling her glass. "I say we teach him a lesson." Jen smirked. "What, like TP his barn?" "Bigger," Laura said. "Let's make him regret crossing me." At home, her son Ethan overheard snippets of the conversation from the stairs. At 10 years old, he was sharp enough to sense something off. His mom had said Sam was mean, but Ethan remembered the farmer's warnings, how he'd tried to stop them before locking the tractor. It didn't add up. He slipped back to his room, unease gnawing at him. The retaliation hit Friday night. Sam woke to the sound of shattering glass, a rock through his toolshed window. He grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside, finding spray paint scrawled across the shed. "Farmer freak." Footprints led to the road, where tire tracks vanished into the dark. Furious, Sam called Tim, who arrived with a shotgun and a grim look. "This is Laura's doing," Tim said. "No doubt." Sam nodded, jaw tight. "She's escalating. I'm not letting her win." The vandalism pushed Sam to his limit. He filed a report with the sheriff's office, handing over camera footage of shadowy figures near the shed. Officer Daniels, a no-nonsense cop with a buzz cut and a dry sense of humor, promised to look into it. Laura's name keeps popping up, Daniels muttered. She's a regular headache around here. Sam spent the next day repairing the shed, his mind churning. He didn't want a war, but Laura wasn't giving him a choice. That afternoon, as he hammered a new pane of glass into place, a small figure appeared at the edge of his property. Ethan, Laura's older kid, pedaling a bike and looking nervous. "Hey," Ethan called, stopping a safe distance away. Can I talk to you?" Sam lowered his hammer, surprised. "What's up, kid?" Ethan shuffled his feet, staring at the ground. "I'm sorry about the tractor. And everything. Mom's mad, but I don't think you're mean like she says." Sam blinked, caught off guard by the apology. "Well, thanks for that. You shouldn't have been up there, but I appreciate you coming clean." Ethan hesitated, then blurted, "She's planning stuff. Bad stuff. I heard her talking about messing with your farm." Sam's gut tightened. "What kind of stuff?" "Dunno exactly," Ethan mumbled. "Just be careful, okay?" Before Sam could press further, Ethan hopped on his bike and sped off, leaving Sam with a mix of gratitude and worry. The kid's honesty was a shock. Maybe there was hope for him yet. That evening, Sam invited Tim over and shared the encounter. "Think he's genuine?" Tim asked. "Seems like it," Sam said. "Might be our edge." Over the next week, Ethan became an unexpected regular. He'd bike over after school, asking about tractors and farm life. Sam, wary at first, warmed to the boy's curiosity. He showed Ethan how Big Red worked, properly this time, with safety rules, and let him sit in the driver's seat, engine off. "You want to learn this stuff the right way," Sam said. "You're welcome here. But your mom can't know." Ethan grinned. "Deal." Meanwhile, Laura caught wind of Ethan's absences. She confronted him one night, furious. "You've been sneaking off to that farmer's place?" After what he did, Ethan stood his ground, a rare defiance in his eyes. "He's not bad, Mom. You're the one starting trouble." Laura's face darkened. She'd lost control of her own kid, and that was unacceptable. Laura's next move was legal. She marched into the sheriff's office, filing a complaint against Sam for endangering her children by locking them in the tractor. She painted a tearful picture, claiming he'd trapped them maliciously. Officer Daniels called Sam in for questioning, but Sam arrived prepared, footage in hand. In the small interrogation room, Daniels reviewed the video, Laura laughing, ignoring Sam's warnings, the kids climbing aboard. "This doesn't match her story," Daniels said, rubbing his temples. "She's wasting my time." "She's trying to bury me," Sam replied. "Check the vandalism footage too." "But it's her crew." Daniels did, and the blurry figures matched descriptions of Laura's friends. He issued a warning to Laura: drop the complaint, or face charges for false reporting and trespassing. She stormed out, humiliated again, but her resolve hardened. "He won't win," she hissed to Jen over the phone. "I'll hit him where it hurts." Sam, meanwhile, grew closer to Ethan. The boy's visits were a bright spot, a chance to pass on skills his own father had taught him. But Laura's silence worried him. She wasn't the type to quit. Tim agreed, suggesting they set a trap. "Let her think she's got an opening," Tim said. "Catch her red-handed." The showdown came on a windy Saturday night. Sam left Big Red parked near the barn, cameras rolling, and waited with Tim in the shadows. Sure enough, Laura and Jen crept onto the property, armed with spray cans and a crowbar. They aimed for the tractor, but before they could strike, Ethan burst from the bushes, shouting, "Mom, stop." Laura froze, stunned. "Ethan? What the hell?" "You're wrong about him," Ethan yelled. "He's not the bad guy." Lights flared as Sam and Tim stepped forward, Daniels emerging from a patrol car nearby. "Caught you," Daniels said, cuffing a sputtering Laura. Jen bolted, but the cameras had her face. Laura's reign of petty terror was over. Laura faced charges: trespassing, vandalism, and reckless endangerment. The subdivision turned on her, her allies scattering as the truth spread. Ethan's stand had tipped the scales, and Sam couldn't help but admire the kid's guts. "You didn't have to do that," Sam told him later, handing him a soda on the porch. "Yeah, I did," Ethan said. She wouldn't listen. The community rallied around Sam. his veggie stand busier than ever. Laura, fined and shamed, moved her family to a rental across town, her influence shattered. Ethan kept visiting, helping with chores and learning tractor maintenance. Sam saw a spark in him, a chance to break the cycle Laura had set. One evening, as they fixed a fence together, Ethan asked, "Think Mom'll ever change?" Sam paused, choosing his words. "Maybe, but you're already different. That's what counts." Ethan smiled, small but real. The farm became his refuge, and Sam found purpose in guiding him. Months passed, and the farm thrived. Laura stayed away, her threats empty. Ethan, now 11, earned his first tractor lesson, engine on, under Sam's watchful eye. "You're a natural," Sam said, clapping his shoulder. One day, a crumpled envelope appeared in Sam's mailbox. Ethan's messy handwriting on the front. "Sorry again. Hope we're cool. Ethan." Inside was a drawing of Big Red, Sam smiling beside it. Sam tucked it into his toolbox, a keepsake. As winter approached, Sam sat on his porch, watching the fields settle under a blanket of frost. Laura was a lost cause, but Ethan wasn't. The tractor trouble had brought chaos, but it had also forged something good. Sam sipped his coffee, content. He'd weathered the storm and come out stronger.